any dogs? Get out right now!
Ha! They're just having a bit of fun.
You're not allowed here with that animal, officer. Karen's voice, shrill enough to cut through the gentle lapping of the lake, whipped across the pristine sand of the lakefront. Alex didn't flinch, his hand resting calmly on the harness of Shadow, who sat perfectly still, eyes fixed forward, a picture of disciplined alertness. Karen, perfectly coiffed, her silk scarf a stark contrast to the casual attire of the other parkgoers, marched closer, her designer handbag swinging like a weapon. I've told you before, this is a community beach, not a dog park, and certainly not for beasts like that. Her gaze raked over Shadow, then lingered on Alex, a sneer twisting her lips. A clear message of disdain for his worn uniform shorts and the faint scent of working dog that clung to him. She just saw a scruffy man with a menacing dog. She had no idea she was speaking to Alex Miller, lead handler for the city's elite K-9 search and rescue unit, a team often called in when the official search grid ran cold. Her assumption, based purely on appearance and her own prejudice, fueled her relentless campaign to ban all dogs, especially large ones, from the lakefront, a campaign that was currently gaining traction, threatening Alex's preferred off-duty training spot with Shadow. Ma'am, Shadow is a service animal, and this area is open to all residents. Alex replied, his voice even, betraying none of the frustration simmering beneath the surface. He knew Karen's type, entitled, quick to judge, and utterly convinced. Of her own righteousness, he'd dealt with worse, but her constant hounding, the thinly veiled insults, and the way she consistently tried to paint Shadow as a threat, was grating. She refused to acknowledge Shadow's gentle nature with children, or the fact that the dog was always on leash, always under control. This daily harassment was exactly why he rarely came during peak hours. But today, a specific training drill required a busier environment. Karen's latest tactic involved collecting signatures for a formal ban, leveraging her influence with the local council, and Alex knew he was running out of time to prove that Shadow, and dogs like him, were assets, not liabilities. Little did she know, his beast was about to become her unlikely savior. Soon, a frantic call would come, a desperate plea for help that would unexpectedly bring Alex and Shadow face to face with Karen's worst nightmare, the discovery of her stolen antique jewelry collection, found precisely where no one would think to look, thanks to Shadow's unmatched nose. This dramatic turn of events would force Karen to confront not just the uncomfortable truth of her loss, but also the deep-seated biases that had driven her crusade against Alex and his partner. This revelation would unfold over the coming days, from the initial shock of the discovery, through a tense confrontation where Karen's prejudgments would be laid bare, leading to a deeper understanding of her hidden past and the reasons for her rigid views. Ultimately, the truth would emerge, not in a courtroom, but in the glaring light of public scrutiny, challenging the community to reflect on fairness, accountability, and the inherent dignity often overlooked in quick judgments. The next morning, a notice appeared taped to the park's main entrance. Kiosk. Proposed amendment to lakefront usage policy, public hearing scheduled. Below it, in bold, were the words, prohibition of canines excluding certified assistance animals for individuals with disabilities from designated beach areas. Karen's campaign was moving fast. Alex read the fine print, noting the deliberately narrow wording of the exception. It was designed to exclude working canines south like Shadow, whose assistance wasn't to a person with a disability in the traditional sense, but to the entire community through law enforcement. It was a loophole designed to discriminate. He felt the familiar knot of frustration tighten in his stomach. This wasn't just about Shadow's ability to run off leash or practice scent work near the water. It was about the principle. It was about respect for service and the dismissal of animals that were more highly trained and disciplined than most humans. He thought back to the countless hours he'd spent with Shadow, starting from the day the eager German Shepherd puppy had first nuzzled into his palm at the academy. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was a partner, a lifeline, and in many ways, his mirror. Alex had joined the K-9 unit after a particularly harrowing incident earlier in his career. A search and rescue operation gone wrong, where valuable time had been lost due to insufficient resources. He'd seen firsthand how much a K-9 team could have made a difference. He'd poured his heart into training Shadow, building an unbreakable bond forged in simulated disaster zones and real-world emergencies. The lakefront, with its shifting sands and varied terrain, was crucial for their specialized training, mimicking conditions they might encounter during actual search missions. But Karen, with her endless complaints to the park rangers and her influential friends on the city council, was making it impossible. She'd even suggested Alex was exploiting his dog, a jab that stung him to the core. He knew he had to fight this, not just for Shadow, but for every working dog and every handler who faced such uninformed prejudice. The public hearing loomed, a stage set for Karen to air her grievances, and for Alex to try and defend Shadow's place in the community. The odds felt stacked against him. 2 days later, the air was thick with the scent of impending rain. Alex and Shadow were deep in the sprawling parkland adjacent to the lake, conducting a routine cold scent training exercise. A week earlier, a hiker had reported losing a small, sentimental locket in this dense underbrush. It was a good exercise for Shadow, reinforcing his focus on minute scent particles over vast areas. They'd been at it for nearly an hour, Shadow working diligently, nose to the ground, when a frantic squawk from Alex's police radio broke the silence. Unit 305, report of B&E, at the Lakeshore Estate, residence of Karen Albright. Major theft, reported. Uniforms en route. Alex froze. Karen, the Lakeshore Estate was barely a mile from their current location, just beyond the thickest part of the park's eastern boundary. He acknowledged the call, knowing other units would handle it. His job was training, but then Shadow's head snapped up, ears swiveling, not toward the distant siren wail, but towards a narrow, overgrown deer trail that branched off their current path. Shadow let out a low, focused whine, his tail giving a few quick, decisive thumps against Alex's leg, a signal Alex knew intimately. He's on something. It wasn't the locket. This was a fresh, urgent scent. Shadow pulled gently but insistently, leading Alex down the barely visible trail, deeper into a rarely used section of the park, far from the manicured lawns of the Albright estate. Alex, curious, allowed him. Shadow was rarely wrong. They moved silently, the rain starting to fall in a soft drizzle, dampening the leaves. The path ended abruptly at a cluster of thick rhododendron bushes, nearly impenetrable. Shadow began to paw excitedly at the base of one, his nose pressed firmly into the damp soil. Alex knelt, pushing aside the branches. There, barely concealed, was a large, expensive-looking duffel bag. It wasn't the locket. This was something else entirely. As he pulled it free, a heavy gold chain spilled out, catching the dull light. Inside, nestled amongst velvet pouches, were more pieces, gleaming diamonds, antique watches, intricately carved emeralds. It was unmistakably the kind of high-value jewelry Karen Albright was known for. Shadow had just found her major theft. Alex stood by the open duffel bag, the rain now falling steadily, washing over his face. Shadow sat patiently beside him, occasionally nudging his hand, as if to say, mission accomplished. The weight of the jewelry in his hands was substantial, both literally and figuratively. He recognized several pieces from local society pages: Karen Albright's signature sapphire pendant, a diamond brooch often photographed at charity galleries. There was no doubt this was her stolen property. He pulled out his phone, the wet screen resisting his touch for a moment, and dialed the precinct. Dispatch, this is K-9 Handler Miller. I believe Shadow just located the Albright stolen property, southeast corner of the park, off the old deer trail, near the perimeter of the estate. There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end, then a flurry of questions. Affirmative, a large duffel bag, appears to be jewelry. All here, no suspects visible. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived. Sirens off, lights flashing through the trees. Officer Davis, a young officer Alex knew from shared trainings, looked at the duffel bag, then at Alex, then at Shadow, his jaw slack. No way. You're telling me your dog found Karen Albright's stuff, the one she's trying to get banned? Alex simply nodded, a wry smile playing on his lips. Shadow's just doing his job. The next part was the one Alex dreaded. He had to go to Karen's house, walking into her opulent living room, still damp from the rain, with Shadow calmly at his heel, felt like an elaborate prank. Karen sat on a silk settee, dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief, surrounded by 2 uniformed officers taking statements. She looked up, her eyes narrowing as she saw Alex. What is he doing here? She demanded, her voice still hoarse. From crying, hasn't he caused enough trouble? Officer Davis stepped forward, holding up a velvet pouch. Mrs. Albright, Officer Miller, and his K-9 partner, Shadow, were conducting a training exercise nearby. Shadow led them to this. He gently emptied the contents of the pouch onto the coffee table. The sapphire pendant gleamed, unmistakable. Karen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She stared at the jewelry, then at Alex, then at Shadow. A confused mixture of shock, disbelief, and something akin to disgust, warring on her face. Her initial reaction wasn't gratitude, but suspicion. How did he find it? Was he was he involved? The accusation hung in the air, a testament to her ingrained prejudice, even with undeniable proof. She couldn't reconcile the beast she despised with the discovery of her precious property. The accusation, though quickly dismissed by Officer Davis, stung. Alex felt a surge of familiar wariness. It was always the same, no matter the proof. Some people just couldn't see past their preconceived notions. He watched Karen pick up her pendant, her fingers tracing the sapphires, her face still a mask of bewildered suspicion. Later, while filing the official report at the precinct, Alex overheard fragments of conversations from other officers. Karen Albright's old man was a stickler for rules. Ex-military, died in a freak accident with a search dog a few decades back. Apparently, animal spooked, bolted, caused a putt-to, and another. Yeah, she's always hated big dogs, especially the working types, something about them being unpredictable and dangerous after what happened to her father. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about a ban on dogs at the lakefront. It was deeply personal for Karen. Her prejudice wasn't random, it stemmed from a traumatic event, a family tragedy she'd clearly never reconciled. Her father, Alex, learned through a quick check of old incident reports, had been involved in a non-police-related search operation decades ago, when a poorly trained civilian search dog had indeed caused an incident that led to his fatal injuries. To Karen, all large working dogs were tarred with the same brush, seen as uncontrollable forces that brought catastrophe. Shadow, with his size and intensity, was a living embodiment of her deepest fears and unresolved grief. Her crusade against the lakefront dogs wasn't about public safety as much as it was about controlling her own environment, an attempt to prevent another unpredictable tragedy from touching her life. This revelation didn't excuse her behavior, but it explained the intensity of her hatred, the personal bias that had blinded her to Shadow's professionalism and Alex's dedication. The thieves, it turned out, were a group of opportunistic local teenagers who knew the Albright estate's vulnerabilities and used the seldom-used deer trail as an escape route. They had planned to retrieve the duffel bag later, once the heat died down. Shadow hadn't just found stolen property. He'd inadvertently exposed the emotional wounds that had driven Karen's systemic injustice against Alex and his partner. The story of Karen Albright's recovered jewelry, found by the very K-9 unit she was trying to ban, spread like wildfire. Through the community, local news picked it up, framing it as a quirky, ironic twist. The initial reports were factual, but the public forum for the Lakefront Policy Amendment, scheduled for that evening, quickly became the main event. The small community hall was packed. Whispers and murmurs filled the air as Karen Albright, looking distinctly uncomfortable, took her seat beside Mayor Thompson and the head of the Parks Department. Alex sat in the front row, Shadow calmly resting at his feet, his presence a quiet, living counterpoint to Karen's past accusations. Mayor Thompson opened the floor for public comments. Several residents spoke, some reiterating Karen's arguments about cleanliness and safety, but their conviction now sounded hollow. Then, a few brave voices rose in Alex's defense, praising Shadow's heroics. Finally, it was Karen's turn to speak. She approached the podium, her usual haughty demeanor visibly deflated. She cleared her throat. "I would like to acknowledge the recovery of my property," she began, her voice unusually subdued, and the role that, that Officer Miller and his dog played in that recovery. A palpable shift in the room. This was a concession, however grudging, but it wasn't enough. Alex knew this was his moment. He waited until she finished. Then, with a nod from the mayor, stood up. Shadow rose with him, a silent, imposing figure. "My name is Alex Miller," he began, his voice clear and steady, cutting through the hushed room. "And this is Shadow. He is a certified K-9 search and rescue partner. We train tirelessly to protect this community, to find lost children, to locate crucial evidence, and, as you now know, to recover stolen property." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The incident with Mrs. Albright's jewelry brought to light not just the importance of K-9 units, but also the dangers of making judgments based on fear and unfounded assumptions. He looked directly at Karen. Mrs. Albright's concerns, while valid to her, stem from a tragic past. Her father died in an accident involving a civilian search dog decades ago. That was a horrific incident, and my deepest sympathies go out to her family for their loss. A ripple of surprise went through the crowd. This was new information for many. But Shadow, and all professional K-9 South, are not that dog. We are highly trained, disciplined, and essential. To ban them from a public space where they need to train effectively diminishes our capacity to serve all of you, including those who may not yet understand our value. Karen's face was a mixture of shock and dawning realization. The public revelation of her personal tragedy, delivered so calmly by the man she had so vehemently opposed, seemed to strip away her defenses. The room fell silent. The weight of his words, combined with the earlier discovery, shattering the assumptions many had held. The truth, finally, was laid bare. The public hearing concluded not with a divisive vote, but with a surprising wave of unified sentiment. Mayor Thompson, sensing the shift, announced that the proposed ban would be withdrawn for further review, and that a new task force, including representatives from the K-9 unit, would be formed to develop a more inclusive policy for responsible dog use at the lakefront. It was a victory, but more importantly, it felt like a communal awakening. A week later, Alex received an unexpected call. It was Karen. Her voice was still somewhat reserved, but the shrill edge was gone. "Officer Miller," she began, "I wanted to express my sincere gratitude for the recovery of my jewelry and ... and for what you said at the meeting." A pause. "I had no idea you knew about my father. I have carried that for a long time." She sighed, a long, weary sound. "I was wrong about Shadow, and about you." He's the remarkable dog, and you're a good man. It wasn't a grand apology, but it was enough. It was an acknowledgement, a crack. In the wall of her prejudice, Alex felt a profound sense of relief. Justice wasn't always a legal ruling. Sometimes, it was a quiet shift in understanding. A healing of old wounds. He and Shadow continued their training at the lakefront. Now, however, the stares were different. They were curious, admiring. Children would often approach, asking if they could pet Shadow, and Karen, occasionally walking by, would offer a small, hesitant smile. The lakefront, once a battleground, had become a testament to understanding. The incident resonated beyond the immediate community. It became a quiet story whispered through town. A reminder that judging a book by its cover, or a K-9 by its breed, often leads to missing the true heroes in plain sight. It challenged everyone to reflect. What hidden biases do we carry? What assumptions do we make that prevent us from seeing the full picture, from recognizing the true value of others, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4? Alex and Shadow, a partnership forged in duty and loyalty, had not only recovered stolen property but had also, in their quiet way, recovered a piece of humanity, proving that accountability and dignity begin with the courage to see beyond prejudice.